case notes. Maternal Family History. So here we have Suzy doing some work with Lucy using the draft genogram that she developed last week as a tool. Have a look at this week's genogram, part 2, for a better idea of how that worked. As usual, we start off with the letter from Suzy to the children, and this just tells them that the history in this case note is their mum's account, and that other people may view things differently. Again, she's just giving them some idea about what's going on with this recording. Suzy arranged to have this discussion with Lucy when the children weren't present so that they wouldn't be interrupted. Obviously, that might not always be possible for you, but I want to impress on you the importance of getting a proper family history. Suzy acknowledges right at the start that this case note is not a verbatim record of the discussion. Real-life conversations have a habit of wandering all over the place in a way which can be quite tricky to read if you were to copy them out verbatim. When recording a family history from a parent, generally you can chop it into 3 sections of different sizes. The first section is their own family's history, going back as far as their parents' childhood, where that's relevant. So that's the children's grandparents. You don't want to spend too long on the children's grandparents, just enough time to give you the information about how the child's parents were brought up when they were kids. What were major events, both positive and negatives? Who were the major players in their development? What view of the world did this give them? What view of relationships as well? They probably won't just be able to tell you that, but you should be able to reflect on themes which occur throughout their life as they talk to you about it. Sometimes this might involve previous relationships where they've had other children or significant experiences which influenced them going forwards. So a partner who died or was abusive, or where they treated the partner badly themselves and learnt about treating people better. 2, their relationship with the child's other parent prior to having children. Sometimes this might be very short, sometimes it might be quite long. This gives you an understanding of the formulation of the relationship and how certain dynamics and patterns of behaviour developed before the big step of having children. 3, what's happened since having children? Who's supported them? Have there been any difficulties around the children? Did the children impact the relationship at all? Are there any specific stresses, any outside influences? By looking at the history in these 3 sections, you'll be in a good position to reflect on what makes the person tick and how they got into the situation that resulted in social work involvement. Now, there's the usual caveat that I have. This is just a way of doing things. It's a rough guide. We can never know everything that's been going on in the family, but the more we know, the better informed that we're going to be. And family histories contain a lot of information, especially where there's a big family or there may have been quite a few significant events. Unfortunately, there's no quick and easy way of recording this history, and the more complex the family history is, the more concerned we are, the more important it is to capture enough information. So in this case note, Lucy's family history, going back to her childhood, written up altogether, is about 650 words. Her early relationship with Mike is about 200, and her family since having children is about 550. So that's a pretty big case note, about 1,300 words or so. Be careful when delving into the family background that you don't start making the parent the focus of your work. What you're looking at is the impact on the children presently from things that had happened in the past. Consider the impact on the children of the family history and how that history influenced who the parents are and how that influences how they parent their children today. Everything must loop back to the children here and now. The language that people use to describe the family history can be very telling, so make sure that you continue to use direct quotes as we spoke about last time. So for example, in the first part of the case note here, Asma is quoted as being the black sheep of the family and has a good boy image, but actually sneaks off. So what does this language that Lucy used to describe her family paint in your mind about their personalities? Think about the roles that they might have had in their families, especially where you have families that have more traditional or cultural values. How do those values influence perceptions? Hafs and Asma engaged in pretty similar behaviour, going to a party, drinking and having sex. One's still known as a good boy who just sneaks off sometimes, and the other is the black sheep. Could their gender be a factor here? How does that fit in with background and culture? So maybe there's more information that we're missing, like if Asma did this all the time, but for the Hafs it was a first. We don't know, but we need to be thinking about these things. Suzy recorded that she questioned whether the marriage was forced, and that's good practice. Again, making it visible in her case notes that she's considering safeguarding. There's a theme looking at Hafs and Asma of both embracing and rejecting their background, their religion and their culture. Asma and Lucy don't feel it has much for them. Asma went on to have other boyfriends and children. Lucy anglicised her name and doesn't really keep in contact with the family members who are much more traditional. Noting these things isn't for you to be judgmental about their choices and try and get them to move in one direction or another, but it's to get a clearer picture of how they have experienced their life. Remember in my video on needs, I spoke about how various experiences toggle those developmental switches. How would these experiences have influenced Lucy's development, and how will that in turn influence how she raises her children? Relationship with Mike. Here, Suzy is describing Mike's actual behaviour instead of simply labelling it, and that gives the reader the ability to reach their own conclusions. Listening to Lucy describe Mike's initial behaviour, I might think that it comes across as being a bit controlling, maybe obsessive. Lucy, however, talks about having enjoyed the attention. By describing the behaviour in the terms that Lucy herself used, a reader is able to reflect on what else they need to read in the file to reach an informed conclusion. If Suzy instead had just written, early in their relationship, Mike acted obsessive and controlling, but Lucy said she liked the attention, Suzy would be recording her own interpretation of events instead of what Lucy said and how she felt. It might be that Suzy is right in that case, or maybe it sounds worse to Suzy than it was, because Suzy's approaching the situation with abuse already in her mind, given what had happened recently, and so she's making assumptions. So neutral descriptive language enables you or any other reader to go back and forwards and gather reasonably objective information for their own analysis without relying on your opinions as the writer. After children. You'll see that Suzy has further subdivided this section with a new heading after the birth of each child and again in the lead up to the current concerns. This highlights the positives as well as the concerns and shows some strengths which might be useful in the work that she does with the family later. It also shows people as being more than what they did on their worst day. Again, Suzy highlights where she asked additional questions to indicate where she thought there might be cause for concern, as well as Lucy's exact words, so anyone reading would be able to get Lucy's response and make up their own mind. I know I keep saying that, but it is very important to do. Suzy tentatively identifies triggers for Mike's drinking, although this is only based on Lucy's account so far. Suzy brings the history right up to the present concerns. She engages Lucy in a discussion about the impact on the children and refers to events in Lucy's childhood to make her points. By recording all of this, Suzy is showing her engagement with Lucy around the concerns, and that Lucy is genuinely invested in the children's well-being, even if maybe she doesn't fully understand the situation. The analysis and reflection consider that Lucy has had several important males in her life just leave, and that Mike is the only one who's shown any real interest and commitment. Finally, Lucy plans what she needs to do for next time.